Hello, my little language enjoyers. And today I'm actually going to be talking about language learning itself and how I've gone about learning languages. So if that interests you, stick around. If not, you might still learn something. So let's get to it. Before we begin, please feel free to subscribe. It really helps out the channel. But all that being said, I'm really happy that people are taking such an interest in language learning. It really is a passion of mine, and I can't wait to share some of the stuff that I've learned. So let's get right to it. My first language learning tip is going to be have a positive attitude. So, what that means is tell yourself that you can do it. So many times I'm approached by people who find out that I speak a couple languages and they're like, "How did you do it? Like, that's just so hard, it's impossible." It's not. It's really not that hard. Look, okay, language learning in and of itself is hard, but right now we are living in the best time ever in the history of humanity to learn a language because we have online resources, which I'm going to continue to talk about, but also we are so interconnected. You can do something called a language exchange and talk to somebody who's half a world away and just have a conversation with them. Like the opportunities, not only online in terms of like applications and study tools, but also things like just being able to talk to somebody from your target language or your target culture are incredible. And that's not even to mention things like being able to watch Netflix or listen to Spotify in your target language too. So really, all that to say is that right here, right now, we've got it good, and you should know that going into learning a language. Okay, so now that we have a positive mindset going into learning a language, we're getting on to my tip number 2 here, and that's have an anchor in your foreign language. And what I mean by that is that anchor is going to be something that you find interesting that also involves the foreign language of your choosing. It could be something like history or culture or books or TV series or music, anything that keeps you anchored into that language. And I say this because, as I mentioned previously, it can be hard learning a language, and sometimes you're going to plateau. Sometimes you're going to feel like you've hit a brick wall and that you can't learn anymore, and you've done so many vocab words and grammar exercises that, oh my gosh, like, I don't know if I could learn any more of this language. But these anchors are going to keep you coming back to whatever language that you're learning. I'll actually give a couple examples of what keeps me anchored in each of my languages. For Mandarin, it's things like music and TV and books and culture as well. So I listen to Chinese music all the time. I'm notorious for it among my friends, and they're like, Pai Huai Te, please change the channel, and I will. But also things like books. I really like reading, and I think China has such a cool literary history, which also brings me into history and culture as well. I find things like Chinese culture and Chinese history very interesting. And maybe I sound like the Chinese version of a weeb, but it really is a culture and a place that has like gripped me from a young age. So in Chinese, I have a really big anchor, and lots of stuff just keeps me coming right back to Mandarin. As for German, if I had to narrow it down to one thing in particular, just to keep the runtime short here, it would be the connections I've made with my friend in Germany and then my German-American friends here. And just that opportunity to be able to speak with them in German about anything is something that really keeps me anchored into the German language as a whole. And finally, for Russian, one thing that really anchors me to Russian is Russian history. I found Russian history very interesting, specifically World War I history with Russia and how the Eastern Front World War I was different than the Western Front World War I. So being able to study history has something that's really anchored me into learning Russian. Okay, so now that we have a good headspace and a good anchor in our target language, my tip number 3 is know what resources are available to you in your target language. A lot of this can actually be done online. You can type in, for example, Uzbek language learning resources, and that'll take you to what resources exist. So if there's a Duolingo or Mango languages, or if there's books, TV series, or even things like textbooks, you'll be able to find those online and act accordingly because there's not exactly a clear path for every single language. So just keep in mind that you might have to do a little bit of research before you actually begin. 2 jumping off places to help you with learning your language that I found are first subreddits. I think subreddits can be very useful in the fact that it's a lot of people learning the same language that you're learning, and they have resources to learn that language, and they can show you all the things that they've done well with learning a language, but they can also show you things that haven't worked for them. The next resource that I'd suggest is your local library. So your local library may have a language section, and it may have something like kids' books in your target language, which are a fantastic way of learning. Even if you're reading about like Hello Kitty in Mandarin, it's still an incredible way to learn because all these kids' books are to help kids learn a language. So it very well can help you, and it has helped me in the past. Okay, so now that we have a good mind space, we're anchored in our language, and we also know what resources are available to us, tip number 4 here is going to be get started. And when you start, make it a routine. So learning a language, you got to start somewhere, right? And it's very, very, very okay if you don't feel like you know anything going in. It's a brand new language. You might be somewhat familiar with the culture, but it is a new language at the end of the day. So it's okay to feel a little lost. But if you keep improving, using the resources that you found day by day, you are going to see improvement. Now, I talk about the dedication part, that persistence. And I think that's very important because languages take time. It's almost like a garden, right? So if you don't water your garden at regular intervals, then your grass is going to die, your trees are going to fall over, and it's going to be horrible, right? In the same way that if you don't continue to foster your language growth and don't continue to learn and strive to know more, you are going to see a bit of a reduction in your language speaking capabilities. You know what? Sometimes it just happens. Life gets in the way. You're busy with work or school or who knows what, and you don't have time to devote to the language of your choice. But my suggestion would be to make it a part of your life. For me, for the languages I can't always just study, like for example, I don't always have the time to study all 3 languages. Mandarin, Russian, and German. It's a bit of a juggling act sometimes. So what I'll do is in the car, I'll listen to music from the languages that I'm not able to fully do at that time. So I know that's not much. It's not sitting down and really like trying to go through a German textbook or a Russian textbook or something like that. But at the same time, it is better than nothing because at least keeping your brain active with whatever language that you're doing is miles and miles and miles better than just languishing and not actually using that language in any way, shape, or form. Okay, so now that we have a good headspace, we're anchored into the language that we want to learn, we know what resources we have, we've started, and we're dedicated. Tip number 5, my final tip here for learning a language, is going to be have fun with it. Learning a language doesn't have to be going through flashcards. Flashcards are very useful, but flashcards can get boring. Learning a language doesn't just have to be opening up a textbook and a workbook and doing sections out of there and just grinding away at that. Have fun with it. I mentioned that right now we're living in the best time to learn a language. And we're also, coincidentally, in my opinion, living in the most fun time to learn a language ever. Because we've got stuff like music. We've got stuff like TV. We have shows on Netflix you can just watch and learn a language. If you don't have Netflix, that's fine. If you don't have Spotify, that's fine. But there's still ways to continue to learn. If you're watching this video, I assume that you have access to YouTube. On YouTube, you can both listen to music and watch people talk in your target language. Even better, you can turn on subtitles. It's beautiful. It's great. And all of this at the tip of your fingers. So have fun with it. Find something that you really are passionate about. And this kind of goes back to having that anchor. Find something that you're passionate about. Find something that's fun to you about the language and get to it. I'm going to end today's video with a quote that I got from a cross-country coach. There's actually 2 of them. The first is, "Suck it up, cupcake. That's nature of the beast," right? So when I think of that and I apply that to language learning, it can be hard sometimes. And I've talked about that. And I want you to know that it can be hard. Don't shy away from that fact. But that being said, my whole philosophy with this is that just because it's hard doesn't make it not worth it. To me, learning a language has so greatly improved my worldview. It's really, if I had to boil it down to one thing, it's taught me empathy. And I've been able to learn it for different cultures. Completely, Russian culture is not the same as Mandarin culture, but I can empathize with the cultures all the same. And that's something that it might be the greatest thing to ever happen to me. It's such a life-changing ability to be able to really empathize with somebody completely across the world and to find things funny like they do and to smile at things that they smile at. And even here, when they come to my country, to be able to talk to them in their own language is incredible. I mean, there's nothing like speaking to somebody in their language. So yeah, it might be hard at sometimes, but that's just the nature of the beast, because I promise you it's worth it. The last quote for today is repetition is the mother of all learning. So, and I kind of touched on this when I talked about dedication. Keep at it. Keep learning. Keep doing things that are helping you grow, and don't grow complacent. So when you're learning a language and something like flashcards is working really well for you, great. But don't just do flashcards. Maybe do flashcards and a couple lessons from a textbook, or some Duolingo, or watch a video, or try challenging yourself and read a big boy chapter book in whatever language that you're learning. Because if you keep at it, you keep on doing it day in, day out, or if you don't have time for that, week in, week out, please study your language a little bit more than once a week if you really want to see progress. But regardless, if you keep studying your language, you're going to keep getting better, and you're going to keep getting better and better and better. And eventually you'll look back at where you began and you'll just be able to smile, because everyone starts somewhere, right? You're starting your language somewhere. I've started 3 new languages somewhere. And I remember being able to speak nothing. But being able to work day in, day out has really helped me become more and more fluent in these languages. And it's really helped me cultivate a deeper and deeper sense of empathy with the people and the cultures and the places that I've learned the languages of. So, thank you very much for watching. I hope that you found these 5 tips informative and helpful. They are just some of the 5 things that really spoke to me when I was reflecting on learning a language. In the future, I might make another video with more tips as I think of them. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.